wabarakatuh. Welcome back to my channel Indonesian Air Traffic Controller. In this video, I will share you about applicability and historical background for Annex 13 up to 19. But before we get into it, thank you for having me, thank you for your attention, thank you for watching my video. And I just want to share this knowledge. I never mean to teach you, and I suppose that this knowledge is essential for all air traffic control, aeronautical telecommunication officer, pilot, so on and so forth. So don't forget to subscribe my channel, hit the bell for notification, like and comment my video. Let's get started.
Wake up, brother, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, you grow hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
Annex 13 about aircraft accident and incident investigation. Historical background of Annex 13, standards and recommended practices for aircraft accident inquiries were first adopted by the Council on 11 April 1951 pursuant to Article 37 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, and were designated as Annex 13 to the Convention. The standards and recommended practices were based on recommendation of the Accident Investigation Division at its first session in February 1946, which were further developed at the second session of the division in February 1947. Applicability of this annex. While the annex has been adopted pursuant to the provision of Article 37 of the Convention, this article imposes an obligation on the states in which the aircraft accident occurs to institute an inquiry in certain circumstances and, as far as its law permit, to conduct the inquiry in accordance with ICAO procedure. However, Article 26 doesn't preclude the taking of further action in the field of aircraft accident investigation, and the procedures set forth in this annex are not limited solely to an inquiry institute under the requirements of Article 26, but under prescribed circumstances apply in the event an inquiry into any aircraft accident within the terms of the definition herein, in order to maintain the correct relationship between the provisions of Article 26 and those of the Annex. The following principles have been observed. A. Article 37 to the Convention is the controlling article in the development of an aircraft accident inquiry annex, but nothing in the annex must contravene the express terms of Article 36 or any other article of the Convention, nor should it contain any provision which would do violence to the spirit and intent of the Convention. Subject to point A, the Annex may deal with any relevant matter, whether or not expressly dealt with by Article 26 or any other article of the Convention. For instance, it is not a contravention of the Convention for the Annex to deal with the right obligations of the states other than the states of registry and the states in which the accident occurred. Similarly, the Annex may deal with the privilege to be accorded to observers entitled by Article 26 to be present at the inquiry. These are matters upon which Article 26 is silent. The Annex may also deal with accidents of a kind which do not fall within the provision of Article 26. Annex 14 about aerodromes consists of two volumes. Number 1, Volume 1, Aerodrome Design and Operations, and Volume 2 about heliports. Historical background of Volume 1, Aerodrome Design and Operation, standards and recommended practices for aerodromes were first adopted by the Council on 29 May 1951 pursuant of Article 37 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation and designated as Annex 14 to the Convention. The standards and recommended practices were based on recommendations of the Aerodromes, Air Routes, and Ground Aids Division at its third session in September 1947 and its fourth session in November 1949. Applicability of Annex 14, Volume 1 is the interpretation of some of the specifications in the Annex expressly requires the exercising of discretion, the taking of a decision, or the performance of a function by the appropriate authority in order specification. The expression appropriate authority doesn't actually appear, although its inclusion is implied. In both cases, the responsibility for whatever determination or action is necessary shall rest with the state having this jurisdiction over the aerodromes. The specification, unless otherwise indicated in a particular context, shall apply to all aerodromes open to public use in accordance with the requirements of Article 15 of the Convention. The specification of Annex 14, Volume 1, Chapter 3 only to land aerodromes. The specification in this volume shall apply where appropriate to heliports but shall not apply to stallports. Wherever a color is referred to in this annex, the specification for that color given in Appendix 1 shall apply. The historical background of Annex 14, Volume 2 about heliports, standard and recommended practices of aerodrome were first adopted by the Council on 29 May 1951, pursuant of Article 37 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation and designated as Annex 14 to the Convention. The document containing these standards and recommended practices is now designated as Annex 14, Volume 1 to the Convention. In general, Volume 1 addresses planning, design, and operation of aerodromes, but is not specially applicable to heliports. Therefore, Volume 2 is being introduced as a means of including provisions for heliports, proposals for comprehensive standards and recommended practices covering all aspects of heliport planning, design, and operation have been developed with the assistance of the ANC Visual Aids Panel and the ANC Heliports Operations Panel. Applicability of this Annex 14 Aerodromes Volume 2 about heliports. The interpretation of some of the specification in the Annex expressly requires the exercising of discretion, the taking of a decision, or the performance of a function by the appropriate authority. In other specification, the expression appropriate authority doesn't actually appear, although its inclusion is applied in both cases. The responsibility for whatever determination or action is necessary shall rest with the states having jurisdictions over the heliport. The specification in Annex 14, Volume 2 shall apply to all heliports intended to be used by helicopters in international civil aviation. They shall equally to areas for the inclusive use of helicopters at an aerodrome primarily meant for the use of aeroplanes. Where relevant, the provisions of Annex 14 Volume 1 shall apply to the helicopter operation being conducted at such an aerodrome unless otherwise specified. The specification for a color referred to within this volume shall be that contained in Appendix 1 to Annex 14 Volume 1. Let's talk about Annex 15 Aeronautical Information Services. Historical background of this Annex: standards and recommended practices for Aeronautical Information Service were first adopted by the Council on 15 May 1953 pursuant to the provisions of Article 37 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, and were designated as Annex 15 to the Convention. Annex 15, as now presented, has undergone the following development. The first requirements were developed by the Air Navigation Committee as a result of the recommendations of regional air navigation meeting, and were published by authority of the Council as procedures for international to airmen. Pence Notem PIQ Document 2713 in January 1947. In 1949, the special Notem meetings reviewed and proposed amendments to these procedures, which were later issued as procedures for air navigation services, Pence IS Document 7106, and which became applicable on the 1st August 1951. In 1952, the Pence IS was reviewed by the first session of the Aeronautical Information Service Division, which recommended the adoption of standards and recommended practices following consideration by all contracting states. These recommendations were reviewed by the Aeronavigation Commission, and the first set of standards and recommended practices was adopted by the Council on 15 May 1953 as Annex 15 to the Convention. This Annex applicable on the 1st of April 1954. The standards, the applicability of Annex 15, the standard and recommended practices in this document govern the application of the procedures of aeronavigation services, aeronautical information management, PANS IM document 10066, and the regional supplementary procedures aeronautical information services contained in document 7030, in which latter document will be found subsidiary procedures of regional application. Annex 16 about environmental protection, divided to two separate sections, Volume 1 aircraft noise and Volume 2 about aircraft engine emissions. Historical background of Annex 16 Volume 1 is standards and recommended practices for aircraft noise were first adopted by the Council on 2 April 1971. Portion of Article 37 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, and designated as Annex 16 to the Convention. Applicability of Annex 16 Volume 1 about aircraft noise. Part 1 of Volume 1 of Annex 16 contains definitions, and Part 2 contains standards, recommended practices, and guidelines for noise certification applicable to the classification of aircraft specified in individual chapters of that part where such aircraft are engaged in international air navigation. Parts 3, 4, and 5 of Volume 1 of Annex 16 contain standards and recommended practices and guidelines material for use by states with a view to promoting uniformity in measurement of noise for monitoring purposes, assessing noise around airports, and regarding the balanced approach to noise management. Historical background of Annex 16, Volume 2 about aircraft engine emission. In 1972, the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment was held in Stockholm. The position of IQ at this conference was developed in Assembly Resolution A18-11, which contained the following clause among others. In fulfilling this role, ICAO in conscious of the adverse environmental impact that may be related to aircraft activity and its responsibility and that of its member states to achieve maximum compatibility between the safe and orderly development of civil aviation and the quality of the human environment. The 18th Assembly also adopted Resolution A18-12 11, relating to the environment, which states the Assembly requests the Council with the assistance and cooperation to other bodies, to the organization and other international, to continue with vigor the work related to the development of standards, recommended practices and procedures, and or guidance material dealing with the quality of the human environment. This resolution was followed up by the establishment of an ICAO action program regarding the environment. As part of this action program, a study group was established to assist the Secretariat in certain tasks related to aircraft engine emissions. As a result of the work of this study group, an ICAO entitled Control of Aircraft Engine Emissions, Circular 134, was published in 1977. This circular contained guidance material in the form of a certification procedure for the control of vented fuel, smoke, and certain gases, emissions for new turbojet and turbofan engines intended for the propulsion at subsonic speeds. It was agreed by the Council that the subject of aircraft engine emissions was not one that was solely confined to objective technical issues, but was one that needed consideration by experts in many fields and included the direct views of member states. A council committee known as the Committee on Aircraft Engine Emissions, or CAEE, was therefore established in 1977 to pursue a number of aspects of the subjects. At the second meeting of the Committee on Aircraft Engine Emissions, held in May 1980, proposals were made of material to be included in ICAO Annex after amendment, following the usual consultation with member states of the organization. The proposed material was adopted by the Council to form the text of this document. The Council agreed that it was desirable to include all provisions relating to environmental aspects of aviation in one annex. It therefore renamed Annex 16 as Environmental Protection, making the existing text of the annex into Volume 1, Aircraft Noise, the material contained in this document becoming Volume 2, about aircraft engine emissions. Annex 17, Security, Safeguarding International Civil Aviation Against Acts of Unlawful Interference. Historical background: the material included in this annex was developed by the Council pursuant to the following resolutions of the Assembly. Resolution 17-10, Implementation by States of Security Specifications and Practices, adopted by this Assembly, and further work by ICAO related to such specification and practices. The Assembly requests the Council, with the assistance of the other consistent bodies of the organization, to develop and incorporate as appropriate The material in the appendices to this resolution as standards, recommended practices, and procedures in existing in in existing or new annexes or other regulatory documents or guidance material of the organization. Resolution A18-10 additional technical measures for the protection of the security of international civil air transport. The Assembly requests the Council to ensure, with respect to the technical aspects of air transportation security, that the subject of air transportation security continues to given adequate attention by the Secretary General with a priority commensurate with the current threat to the security of air transportation. Following the work of the Air Navigation Commission, to the Air Transport Committee, and the Committee on Unlawful Interference, and as a result of the comments received from contracting states and interested international organization to whom draft material had been circulated, standards and recommended practices on security were adopted by the Council on 22 March 1974 pursuant to the provision of Article 37 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation and designated as Annex 17 to the Convention with the title Standards and Recommended Practices, Security, Safeguarding International Civil Aviation Against Acts of Unlawful Interference. Applicability of this Annex is each contracting state shall apply the standards and shall endeavor to apply the recommended practices contained in Annex 17 to international civil aviation operations. Each contracting state shall ensure that measures designed of safeguard against acts and unlawful interference are applied to domestic operations to the extent practicable, based upon security risk assessment carried out by the relevant national authorities. Annex 18 about the safe transport dangerous goods by air. Historical background is the material in this annex was developed by the Air Navigation Commissions in response to a need expressed by contracting states for an internationally agreed set of provisions governing the safe transport of dangerous goods by air. In order to assist in achieving compatibility with the regulations covering the transport of dangerous goods by other modes of transport, the provisions of this annex are based on the recommendations of the United Nations Committee of Experts on the transport of dangerous goods and the regulations for the safe transport of radioactive material of the International Atomic Energy Agency. And applicability of this annex, standards and recommended practices of this annex shall be applicable to all international operations of civil aircraft. And number two, where specifically provided for in the technical instruction. The states concerned may grant an approval provided that in such instance an overall level of safety in transport which is equivalent to the level of safety provided for in the technical instructions is achieved in instance point A of extreme urgency, or B when other forms of transport are inappropriate, or C when full compliance with the prescribed requirements in contrary to the public interest. The states concerned may grant an exemption from the provision of the technical instructions provided that in such instances every effort shall be made to achieve an overall level of safety in transport which is equivalent to the level safety provided for in the international instructions. Number 3, for the states of flight, if none of the criteria for granting an exemption are relevant, an exemption may be granted based solely on whether it is believed that an equivalent level of safety in transport has been achieved. Annex 19, Safety Management. Historical background of Annex 19 about safety management is the provisions in this annex have been developed in response to recommendations provided by the Directors General Civil Aviation Conference and a global strategy for aviation safety, Montreal 20 up to 22 March 2006, and the High Level Safety Conference, Montreal 1999, 29 March to the 1st of April 2010, regarding the need for an annex dedicated to safety management. The Air Navigation Commission, having determined these issues to be sufficient scope and importance, agreed to establish the Safety Management Panel to provide recommendations for the development of this annex. Standards and recommended practices in this annex intended to assist states in managing aviation safety risks. Given the increasing complexity of the global air transportation system and its interrelated aviation activities required to assure the safe operation of aircraft, this annex supports the continued evolution of a proactive strategy to improve safety performance. The foundation of this proactive safety strategy is based on the implementation of a state safety program that systematically addresses safety risks. Effective SSP implementation is a gradual process requiring time to mature fully. Factors that affect the time required to establish an SSP include the complexity of the air transport system as well as the maturity of the aviation safety oversight capabilities of the states. This annex consolidates material from existing annexes regarding safety program and safety management system, as well as related elements including the collection and use of safety data, and state safety oversight activities. The benefit of drawing together this material into a single annex is to focus states' attention on the importance of integrating their safety management activities. It also facilitates the evolution of safety management provisions. Certain states' safety management function required in Annex 19 may be delegated to a regional safety oversight organization or a regional accident and incident investigation on behalf of the states. So, this annex that contains sharps related to responsibilities and processes underlying the safety management by states was first adopted by the Council on 25 February 2013 pursuant to the provisions of Article 37 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, and designated as Annex 19 to the Convention. The SHARPs were based on provisions for the safety management initially adopted by the Council in Annexes 1, 6, Parts 2, Parts 1, 2 and 3, 8, 11, 13, and 14, Volume 1, and on recommendations of the first special meeting of the SMP in Montreal, 13 up to 17 February 2012. So, applicability of this annex. The standards and recommended practices contained in this annex shall be applicable to safety management functions related to or in direct support of the safe operation of aircraft.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's